Hi, and welcome to Elemental's Great Pacific Garbage Patch Lesson, Material List, and Setup video. So you may be asking yourself, what is a Great Pacific Garbage Patch? Well, the patch itself is a humongous amount of plastic that is floating in the ocean. And since plastic is one of those materials that does not biodegrade through erosion process, really, these plastics are at various stages, be it the full, complete package of just the container down to these microplastics that are floating, and they are really quite small and in some cases microscopic. And they're all floating around, and they are being swirled around by these huge gyres that are a confluence, of course, of the Pacific currents that are flowing throughout there. So there are huge problems, of course, that arise for the marine life that inhabit those waters. But now we're starting to see a huge negative impact on human life as well. So this is a problem that is very topical and very timely for your students. And it's something that we are going to have to resolve sooner rather than later. So a portion of this lesson is going to be dedicated to demonstration. And we're going to talk about the materials that you will use for that demonstration. Now you'll notice that it's pretty minimalistic when it comes to the things that you'll need. The first, of course, being the research, which is going to be a series of several articles. I have my computer keyed up here to one of the main articles. It comes to us from Scientific American. What I really like about this particular article is that it creates this slideshow that really gives this visual walkthrough of what's happening, not just with the plastics, but the emanating effects of all the ripples of consequence that are happening to both marine life and, like we said again, human existence. For the actual demonstration, you're going to want to have just a few things. Really the clear bins, and of course you can have one main one for you, the teacher, and then if you would prefer, you can have several bins in like this one laid out for student groups to kind of observe and experiment with. But it's really quite simple. So you're going to take multicolored straws, or you might use popsicle sticks. Now I generally like to cut them. I'll get a green one. What you really want to see is plastic floating in water, which is essentially what this is. And then you're going to just show basically how those currents and those gyres work to create these strange patterns and then create this large mass of plastic that does exist out in the Pacific. So one, you can use a larger straw and simply blow into the water. You can, of course, use that same straw for stirring and kind of creating in the corner small currents. It's really interesting, even though it's a very simple lesson and experiment, it's kind of neat to see how the material behaves. Lastly, you can always use a pitcher filled with water to pour in and kind of create those moving water patterns. Or in some cases, as I suggest in the lesson, if you wanted to use a larger baby pool and even a hose, you could to really get a strong effect, and that would be an excellent visual for your students. So after you have experimented and kind of given a demonstration of what it's like out there in the ocean, of course on a very microcosmic scale, we're going to do some research further into the problem through, of course, these articles that I've given you. And then you're going to take a look at a YouTube video that shows there's a Dutch company that has a pretty dynamic and controversial solution to all these problems just by simply using the currents that are out there. The company's main engineer is a man named Slat, and he has a really interesting TED Talk that I've included for you here to do that solution research. So afterwards, your students, after researching what the problem is, researching what the potential solution is, they're going to come together in groups and discuss what they really think is feasible in terms of Slat's solution. Afterwards, they're going to write an editorial piece basing their opinions in research and seeing what they think is possible and what may be not possible in terms of the problem. Of course, it would always be really interesting for these students, and I guarantee you they will come up with solutions of their own. So that'll be really interesting to see as well. So I hope that helps you as you set up for the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.